Traveled down the Ohio River with George Rogers Clark stopped here, right at the falls of the Ohio. Their first home was Corn Island, named for their first crop. Back in those days, it was all about corn, and the best way to preserve it was by distilling. Now that whiskey wouldn't have met our standards today, but practically everybody took a turn at distilling because you could spend whiskey just like money. Out of all those distillers, one man stood head and shoulders above the rest, Evan Williams. He'd come to America to seek his fortune. Stonemason and builder, entrepreneur, distiller and town leader. In fact, there wasn't much Evan couldn't do. Just across the street from here, he built his distillery and set about making history. His brother made more whiskey than anybody, and made it the best.
Gentlemen, we're nigh on to the starting hour on business presses. I'm hard to see so many here. This is a weighty issue, so keep your ears open and your wits about you. This meeting of the Louisville Town Trustees, now in order. Where's Williams? He's mashing. He said he'd be here as soon as he can.
And not attended the meeting?
We have one issue before us, the Wharf Master. We lose money every day we don't have it.
That's right. We can't have this meeting without him.
He'll be here directly, Thomas.
Still, we can't discuss Wharfmaster without him. He knows the wharf better than anyone on the board or in this room. I know other merchants feel the same way I do. He is the only man for the job.
I am satisfied that he'll be here as soon as he can.
Sorry, gents. Devil of the night.
Meeting's already in session now.
My apologies. Had to see the match through to the
Remember
end.
that now, Ruben. We voted last week. Business first and then a taste or two. I've just begun discussing the Wharf Master. Now, Chair recognizes James Patton.
I nominate Evan Waits. You're not even sitting on the board this term, Patton. You got no standing to nominate.
Well, I should. Wharf rules my shipping business. You've already heard from young Prather here. We need Evan. We've been talking about this for a week.
Evan, what do you have to say about all this?
I'm honored by your trust, but James is right. We've all got a stake in the river. That's why the town is here. Broadhead and young Thomas over there. Fill their stores with sundries from Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. We all get tools and supplies we've got to make ourselves. My wife's got her eye on a bolt of some fancy something or other. And I'm waiting on a new still that will nearly double my capacity. Every day more and more boats arrive. They all should pay their fees. Louisville is the best port on the Ohio.
You ain't got the time, Williams. Can't even make it to the meetings when you should.
Nobody's got time, Ruben. If somebody's got to do it. It's the town's only income. You got
Oh, what are you saying? Will you do it?
You giving up your other work?
Nobody's asking that. So will you do it?
The town's gonna pay him for his services, and the fees will end up in his pocket.
What are you saying? Will you do it for the town?
I will.
Excellent. All in favor, say aye. Aye. The ayes carried today. Thank you, Evan.
I appreciate the confidence, gentlemen, but I have to get back to work. Men can't be left on their own too long.
This meeting is adjourned.
Enjoy the whiskey, gents. Just pulled it off the still this afternoon.
Congratulations, Evan.
I appreciate it, James. Always good to see you.
Good to see you, my friend.
Thomas, my friend, thank you. Evening, folks. Thanks for turning out.
Okay, guys, so there you have it. We have that Wharf Master do his first transaction as a Wharf Master.
Men don't seem to feel the same fire about the new still as I do. 8 days on the river from Pittsburgh, and all they can do is practice their lazy manner at night spins. Charlie, Jacob, that new still's not going to walk itself into the distillery on its own. Pick up the pace, man.
Chop, chop.
James.
Thank heaven for that. He's talked of nothing else for days.
Well, I know the whiskey he makes, little girls I transport over the falls. So it's a good day for me too.
Just wait till you see it in action, James. It's huge. It's brilliant. You need a hand there?
Yes, no, sir. With it.
What are you going to do with another distillery?
Why, make more whiskey. Right now, best I can do is 223 gallons from cooking. But with 3 stills up and running, I can make 464. Think.
But Evan, you're already making more than anyone else in town.
That's right. And just you wait. Charlie and I already have ourselves a plan. Don't we, Charlie?
Well, what's up now, Evan? So it's safe to shoot the falls. Put new whiskey in barrels. Lots of thirsty folks down in New Orleans.
Thirsty folks everywhere, James.
Aye. Excuse me, sirs, but I'm looking for the Wolfmaster.
Well, you found it.
Well, all right. The captain says I'm to get this. Use that boat down there. The one at the pool. Right. Make sure they don't go in your pocket, Williams.
Williams here's got himself a new still, Reuben. He doesn't need to fill the town's money.
I've seen it.
Whiskey won't be no good, though. Can't be quality when it's that big a bag. Never knew you'd be choosy about where you get your whiskey, Easton.
Just you wait, Reuben. I'll see you get the first drink. Then you'll be the judge.
Okay, guys, so.
If a whiskey's not at least 51% corn, it's not bourbon. Then we add rye or wheat to round out the flavor, and barley malt to add sweetness and kickstart the natural fermentation process. All our grain comes from family farmers we've been working with for generations. Every truckload's inspected and tested to ensure superior quality. Then the grains are loaded into silos. To make fine bourbon, you've got to mill each of the grains into a fine meal, like flour, that's then weighed to exacting specifications. Our central Kentucky limestone filtered water is so pure, it's perfect for making bourbon whiskey, as it adds minerals and filters out iron. Each grain is added in a particular sequence, at the specific temperature that brings out the best in its flavor. Then the mash is cooked for 2 hours. While the mash is cooking, we add a portion of yesterday's batch, called backset. This is known as the sour mash method, which ensures that the bourbon has a consistency of flavor and taste. The cooked mash is sent through cooling pipes, 1 mile of them. Now it's ready for the fermenter and a carefully weighed portion of the proprietary yeast that has been in the family for generations. After a couple of days in the fermenting tank, you'll see a few bubbles on the surface. That's the yeast doing its work converting the grain mash into alcohol. A day or so later, the whole thing starts bubbling and boiling like mad. When all the intense boiling stops, you're left with a low alcohol liquid called distiller's beer. Now the trick is to separate the alcohol from the beer. You send the distiller's beer up a giant 70-foot column still near the top and turn up the heat. As the beer boils, alcohol vapor rises, while the solids flow down the still through a series of perforated copper and stainless steel plates to the bottom and become an alcohol-free product called stillage that farmers use as a protein-rich livestock feed. That vapor at the top of the still is condensed into a spirit called low wine. But we're not done yet. Our bourbon is distilled for a second time to purify it and raise the proof. We do that in a smaller still called a doubler. The low wine is heated again until the alcohol re-evaporates, and that vapor rises again and is cooled in the condenser. The alcohol is now a pure, clear liquid known as high wine. Although some call it white dog, we call it new make. As the new make flows through the try box, our master distiller draws off a portion to test its proof. By law, new make has to come off the still at 160 proof or less in order to be called bourbon. The way we figure that out is through a process called gauging. Then we use more pure limestone water to reduce the whiskey to 125 proof for barreling. As important as the skill and artistry of the master distiller are, a lot of what makes bourbon bourbon happens in the barrel. Back in the early 1800s, bourbon lore has it that a Baptist preacher and distiller named Elijah Craig figured out if you could char the inside of a new oak barrel, whiskey that's rusting there develops the distinctive color and flavor we now call bourbon. We still age our bourbon naturally, and traditional open rick warehouses that aren't temperature controlled. As our bourbon ages and the seasons change, the whiskey seeps through the charcoal to the red layer beneath, where it marries with the caramelized wood sugars. The longer in the barrel, the deeper the color and more intense the flavor. Once the barrel's filled and the bung is hammered in, all we have to do is wait. Mother Nature does the rest.
Okay, guys, give me 2 giant steps to the other side of the room. And time monitor. There was our Birmingham distillery. At Birmingham, that is where our parent company distills from only. So what we do from that location, we fill up 12 of those tanker trucks that you saw at the beginning of the film. And we send 12 of those tanker trucks down to Bardstown, Kentucky every single day, fill with new make, and we fill 1,500 barrels, guys, every single day. Keep in mind the Birmingham distillery that is here about a mile and a half down the road is a column still. It runs 24/7, it never stops, and it runs automated. Totally different from what you see here. This is a craft distillery, which means it's hands-on. It takes 3 employees to successfully run this distillery. And what do we produce? Well, we produce a whopping 1 barrel a day, right? So guys, we start early morning, we cook our grains the same way you saw on the monitor. Our grain cooker is below the surface here. That's the only piece of equipment you don't see. But once the grains are cooked, they sit up through these very large pipes into these 2 fermenting vats. The fermenting vats is where we add the yeast. Adding the yeast kickstarts the fermentation process. The fermentation process is the longest part of the process that can last anywhere from about 2 to 5 days. But as the fermentation process is taking place, once it is completely finished with fermentation, we have a low alcohol beer called a distiller's beer. 6% alcohol at this point. Let's move the beer to this beer still right here. What we're gonna do, turn up the heat, the alcohol vapors are gonna travel up. Those vapors are gonna travel up to the top of the still over to the very large condenser that's filled with cooling pipes. Then we're gonna change the vapor to a liquid that's gonna come out of this first try box, is what we call a low wine. Not quite there yet, so we're gonna take the low wine, put it still behind me called the doubler. We're doubling the proof, same process, turn up the heat. Alcohol vapors travels up to the smaller condenser, fill the cooling pipe, changing that vapor to a liquid. Coming out of this try box is what we call new make. Now, when it comes off the second distillation run, officially we can begin to make bourbon. But here's where the bourbon law comes in at. To be a bourbon, it cannot come off the still any higher than 160 proof. We bring it off the still somewhere around 138 or so and put it right here in this gauging tank. We get ready to put that new make in a barrel, but there is a barreling proof law. The bourbon law says to be a bourbon, new make cannot go in the barrel any higher than 125 proof. Now we need to cut it with water to bring it down to exactly 125. After we cut it with water and bring it to 125, we put that new make in the barrel at exactly 125 in proof. And that's when we get that whopping 1 barrel of bourbon that we make from this location. Come on, follow me. Let's talk what happens next. We had 42 distillers straight out their door. And we had all kinds of bars, and we had taverns and cooperages, those who made barrels. Anybody that want to get into the whiskey business, right here in the heart of Main Street is where you wanted to land. We even, guys, I had this saloon right here, which was the Phil Hollenbach Company, which is our building. So this is what our building looked like 100 years ago, and today it said the Evan Williams Experience. This is a great replica of the saloon on the block, guys. Our building housed. Phil Hollenbach made his own whiskey as well back then. Only the men were allowed to go into Phil Hollenbach Company back then, because they was the only one allowed to go into the saloons. But men, not only did you go there and get your whiskey, you also went there to get your mail. Back then, if you lived in this area, this is where your mail slots was located. As you're coming through, you're going to see the mailman's desk, and next to it, you're going to see a big brown backboard desk with the gold handles. That is considered where your mail slots would have been back during a Whiskey Road era of 1890. But anyway, guys, come on down Whiskey Road.